The most famous and emblematic American hero of his time. He defended us against foreigners, fairies, and egoists.
I'm fighting for all those people that have remolded their lives, man. Modeled after Hulkamania.
Disgraced and erased after audio of bigoted remarks surfaced in 2015, he was later redeemed and reclaimed.
The prayers, the dreams of America, and all those little Hulkamaniacs are going into that ring with me tonight, brother.
Hulk Hogan died of heart failure on July 24th, 2025. Now that a few months have passed, we are going to talk about Hulk Hogan less as the action figure and more as the historical figure. To help me, I've invited back media critic and wrestling fan Sarah Kerchak, as well as professional wrestling's preeminent scholar Dr. Sharon Mazer. We will throw off the thoughtless reverence that accompanied initial reports, while embracing nostalgia and compassion for a man who was once a hero of mine and a symbol, if not a hero, for most Americans, if we care to admit it.
I got really put on the spot because I did 3 media gigs on the day. And in each case, it was a fairly shallow gig. They really wanted the lightest possible touch. It was very hard to say, this is a very complicated legacy. You're giving him too much credit to some degree for being the icon that transformed professional wrestling into this international phenomenon. They wanted me because I had seen him perform. In his heyday at Madison Square Garden, I had been, in the cheap seats up at the top several times when he was the main event. And so I could share that memory of how he would stay as they were packing up the chairs. He would sign shirts for the kids. He would let them take his picture. He was very good at that. And it is a really vivid memory of how impressive that was because he wasn't being paid to stand at that point. But no, he was not a very good wrestler. Nobody much liked him. And yet here he was performing the Golden Boy, and we all know what he's been doing in the years since. So it was very disorienting because I wanted them to at least ask me a question that was more complicated than, was he really popular when you saw him? It didn't matter that everybody put him over and he was incapable of putting anyone else over because that would have taken a commitment to somebody else being in the spotlight, let alone the racism, the tearing off his shirt for Donald Trump, and the problem of aligning Golden Boy wrestler with Golden Boy president. So, as an academic in particular, I thought, well, this is a great use of my all those years of research boils down to, yes, he was still posing as they were packing up the chairs. So, what do we do with that? He was a person. He was influential in his time, not because of any calculated effort on his part, but he was very good at being used for a purpose. And he stayed that way to the very end.
One thing I have been thinking about is that, like, we know Hogan changed wrestling, that wrestling would not be what it is without Hogan. But we also don't know if wrestling would have been better without Hogan. And that's talking about the in-ring stuff, but also behind the scenes, like who would not have been held down, who could have been the next star. How might that have changed the culture around wrestling? If a union had been in place whose lives would have been extended by healthcare, how would that have changed the culture of wrestling in front of the camera and behind the scenes as well? So, yes, he put wrestling on the map, but that isn't to say that he's the only one who could have done it.
I can tell you, before Hogan took over WWF, a lot of it was Andre the Giant. And so what they would do is that on Sunday morning he would wrestle someone that's not very large at all, and he'd very gently defeat them. He would just kind of play with them, and we would just be like, God, he's so big, wow, and he's gentle and kind, and he doesn't even like defeating this person, right? But then they would introduce a real sadistic person like Blackjack Mulligan, who had a glove that every time you put it on your head, you'd bleed like profusely. And what is he doing to you with this glove? Are there razors in there, or is he just so big and strong that he can squeeze your head and break it? And so then you would have to pay to see Andre the Giant put those guys in their place. And, I was a child, but I thought, wow, that's dramatic enough for me. The question is, could it have gone from DC 20, the UHF channel, to the USA channel, to pay-per-view, to WrestleMania, to taking
Oh,
over
yeah.
our culture?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But it's not just Hulk Hogan by himself. It was a whole system, and it was the promoter, and it was the commentators, and it was the deeper and deeper intrusion of the cameras.
You know, Hulk Hogan, his wrestling was good enough for me. I thought his performances were great. Awesome. I was thrilled when he came out to help Bob Backlund. The first time that aired, I was watching it. And I was so thrilled. Because poor Bob Backlund, he was supposed to fight one Samoan, and there were 3 plus Captain Lou Albano. That's unfair.
Look at this! Beyond description! Hogan is bleeding hell!
Vince McMahon chose to create this star in Hulk Hogan to bring wrestling to the next level. And the mechanism was fighting people of color, foreigners. It was very much of a piece with Rocky.
Yeah.
Right? Rocky fights a black guy twice, and then he fights Hulk Hogan, the mean wrestler, and then he fights another black guy, and then he fights the Russian guy.
Absolutely, because it's about others, and it's about asserting a self that is inviolate. And at his height, Hulk Hogan was that self into which all of us could project ourselves, see ourselves reflected. We get our very own t-shirts to rip. We can't condemn him because he was us. At a critical moment, he was us.
I can sign up for that. Yeah, I can.
Love him or hate him, he was us. A fiction constructed and projected by Vince McMahon. That didn't stop him from being, in a kayfabe sense at least, absolutely real in that, and committed to the bit, which is all you ask of a wrestler, really. And when you think of his heart failing, this was a guy whose entire identity was caught up in that relationship with the spectators, that love, that spotlight. And when you think about how he stood up out there at that Monday Night Raw and delivered his spiel to the audience that was booing him, imagine how that would have struck him.
Because you guys have stuck with me through thick and thin, dudes. Nobody cares. I've got a new tag team partner right now. I got Hulk Hogan's Real American Beer that I've teamed up. And the WWE is tag teamed up with Netflix, the greatest tag team partner of all time. So what you gonna do with the WWE? And Netflix runs wild on you, maniacs.
And so, how unaccustomed he would have been. And he's not Trump. Trump can hear the boos and go basically and towards them because they're just losers. But Hulk Hogan genuinely believed in that connection to the audience. He genuinely believed in his Hulkamaniacs and his demandments. He was actually his own first true believer. He loved it. He needed it. It fueled him. It told him who he was. And who was he without that? Just some guy who said the N-word. I mean, which would you rather be?
Yeah. So you're saying he died of a broken heart?
This is me being sentimental. He was given a chance with the WWE, and he wouldn't have been invited back after that. They wouldn't have risked it.
They do say that sometimes elderly people die after their spouse passes on because they have less of a reason to live.
Sure.
Sarah, I think you're going to be the one who knows the story best. Can you explain why we know that Hulk Hogan used the N-word?
Well, it was 10 years almost to the day that he died.
The National Enquirer reports that Hogan used racial slurs in audio secretly recorded. He refers to his daughter's then boyfriend using the N-word.
Do you have any personal preference who ethnically your daughter dates?
No, I don't.
Are you a racist?
No, I'm not. I'm not a racist.
Because it wasn't just that he said the N-word, it's that he was in bed with his friend Bubba the Love Sponge, his wife.
Did you not know this, Eric?
I thought
Go,
his.
Sarah.
Okay, just tell us. Just tell us.
Okay, so there were many layers of scandal here. He had said the N-word amongst all sorts of other horrible things as well.
A few days after the first video was published, a transcript of another tape surfaced. In this one, Hogan made homophobic remarks. He told Bubba and Heather about a plan to visit his childhood home for his reality show, but when describing a large man who answered the door, Hogan used several queer-phobic slurs. World Wrestling Entertainment terminated Hogan's contract, removed all references to him from their website, took him out of the Hall of Fame, and pulled his merchandise from sale.
Also, an entire history of him sabotaging black wrestlers backstage as well.
Like the ones who could be faces, you mean?
Yeah, or could be anything in the company whatsoever.
Yeah. Could have any place or presence.
Yeah.
Full on racism. Yeah.
Well, he didn't mind fighting Asians and Polynesians. And I can think of at least one African-American wrestler he fought a lot.
As long as they put him over.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, the reason I asked about the N-word is that I think that's of a piece with wrestling as a political project since Vince McMahon took it over, to dehumanize people of color or gay people or often women, to the point where you would pay money and delight in seeing them humiliated and punished or destroyed. And as you wrote quite presciently, because it was a long time ago, wrestling is escaping the arena and becoming part of our culture.
The other complexity is that the WWF's fan base in particular, always striving to be smart fans rather than marks, would discuss that Hulk Hogan wasn't a good wrestler, that the other wrestlers were carrying him, that he was being put over by Vince McMahon. All of that was in the air. So the place I've been heading to is that he's the point where we agreed that we would cheer the guy that we were told to cheer, regardless of what we thought we knew about him, and that we would follow that pattern as an audience, that we would buy into that. That if you tell me that Hulk Hogan and Macho Man have made an alliance and they're the besties and they're champions and all of that, we'll buy it for a time. And then when Miss Elizabeth gets in the way of that, we will understand that Macho Man is being unreasonable and Hulk Hogan remains virtuous. Whatever we're being told, we're navigating it according to a script that's been provided for us, again, kayfabe. And that the sign of us being smart starts to be not that we're puncturing the illusion of the fair fight, but that we're playing along with it. We know that it's not a fair fight, and we're playing anyhow. This is what Josie Riesman talks about when she's talking about neo-kayfabe, of course, because I'm still trying to explain why fans, voters could be in a room with Donald Trump during the election campaign while he swayed on stage for 40 minutes. This is my point of return, my endless obsession. How is it possible? So many people in that room and so many more people watching the video afterwards, watching Donald Trump swaying back and forth for 40 minutes and still said, yep, that's the guy I want to lead the free world. How is that possible? Well, it's possible because of the conditioning. It's all a show. Those lines are now blurred. And so this is our guy. We're being told this is our guy. And so this stays our guy. And of course, what's interesting with all the media bits that I've done is that wrestling is shorthand for all that is stupid and evil in the world. You know, superficial, cheap and cheesy. If you say wrestling or you say Hulk Hogan, you're right there. So nobody wanted me to say these things. Thank you for letting me.
I have to go in this steel cage because of you, wizard, because of Kimchi, and because the beast, the Ugandan giant, programmed to wipe me out and all my Hulkamaniacs.
I thought he was great for what he was cast to do. And just like any person of color or a white person who puts on blackface, if they're cast to do something racist, there's a limit to how much criticism they deserve. Because it wasn't Hulk Hogan's script. That was Vince McMahon's script.
Now I'm the world heavyweight champion. I beat Bob Backlund, man. The reason I say you people prejudice because you go bring that animal, Hulk Hogan.
Wait for a moment. He is on top of the sheet, pounding away. The sheik still has
I think that if historians were to write about the United States as an experiment in democracy, Hulk Hogan will kind of fall into the same category as Gus, the renegade Negro from A Birth of a Nation.
Oh,
Gus, the renegade Negro, was not a Negro. Actually, he was a white actor named Walter Long wearing shoe polish. And there are other African American characters in A Birth of a Nation who are played by African Americans, but to play the rapist, who really only is a character with only one note, I want to rape the white virgin. I guess they could only really trust a seasoned white actor with shoe polish. So the moral to the story, if you don't know the movie Birth of a Nation, is that the Ku Klux Klan was necessary. If you need to use murder and terror, it must be done. Hulk Hogan, he did a lot of wrestling before 1984. He did a lot of wrestling after 1984. But where he became a star and where he made wrestling what it became was in righting an injustice where these non-white wrestlers were winning the title from Bob Backlund, who was the white All-American boy. And what we needed was a bigger, tougher, meaner white All-American boy. So along comes Hulk Hogan to kick some Samoan ass and to defeat the Iron Sheik. And one thing that was really memorable to me as a spectator who was young enough not to know it was all a show was that when Hulk Hogan jumps the Iron Sheik from behind, I'm cheering, we're all cheering. The lesson is that cheating is sometimes necessary if it's in defense of white supremacy. And what teaches us that? These dramatizations, whether they come from the biggest blockbuster movie that was ever made until Star Wars, or whether it comes from decades of professional wrestling content, whether you're the guy in the shoe polish or you're the golden boy, whether you're Hannity or you're Combs, you're all telling the same story. You're all working for the same man.
Mm. I think that is one of the layers and one of the complexities. I agree with you, Eric. I absolutely agree with you. There's something really insidious, and it is white supremacy rippling underneath it. So it's no surprise that he turns out to be a white supremacist and that he's allied with all of those performances of fascism that we're seeing now. All of those things are true, but how did he change us and our relationship, not just to the game, but to the world that the game represents? That's really what I'm obsessing about. What does this say about not the cupidity of the fans, their gullibility, their ability to be swayed into something less than savory by such actors, but the complex sets of agreements that fans who are also voters that they absorb and enact when they cheer, when they align themselves with the values so represented. How complicated, how complex we really are as spectators. We're not just idiots sitting there. We're actually making deals ourselves with the performer over and over and over again. Can I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
One of the things that was interesting about the coverage, and I did take in my not so copious spare time a real deep dive, is that it was fixated on him lifting Andre the Giant in 1987. And
Mhm.
Andre the Giant was a hero. How is it that all of this coverage was fixated on that point where Hulk Hogan lifted Andre the Giant? How is it that Andre the Giant, who was so loved as a gentle giant, how is it that when we're fixating on the passing of Hulk Hogan, the moment that we're fixating on is him lifting Andre the Giant?
You know, it just rolled over me because my heart was broken all those years ago.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I stopped watching.
Mm.
They made my hero into a bad guy.
Entering the ring at this time, from Grenoble in the French Alps, weighing 492 pounds, ladies and gentlemen, the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant.
He was a hero to all the kids. When they did a Sports Illustrated article about Andre the Giant, and they showed the Coors can in his hand and how he dwarfed the Coors can, and how he had to use a pencil to dial a rotary phone because his finger wouldn't fit in it. And they just talked about him as a person, and it was in Sports Illustrated. Like, that was so important to me. I loved him. And Princess Bride comes along later. I already loved him by then. So yeah, that's where that injustice of, oh yeah, and Andre the Giant was the guy he slammed. That's his Hulk Hogan's greatest accomplishment.
And that is the image, these media people that I was talking to, the journalists that I was talking to, that is what they return to. That's what they know. It is amazing to me how iconic that particular, which never occurred to me. I had actually forgotten until the obituary that this is the signal moment in Hulk Hogan's career.
I'm here for one reason, to challenge you for a world championship match in the WrestleMania. Andre, please, no, it's not happening. We're friends, Andre, please.
And the complexities of that, I'm just starting to percolate through. The breaking of a young man's heart by repositioning Andre as a heel and then lifting him and throwing him to the ground. The way in which the audience was brought to come alongside that and embrace that, and how almost 40 years later, this is what we're going to remember. That's both fascinating, kind of fabulous, and also completely wrong in some way. It tells us almost everything we need to know. The fact that the audience agreed, what does that tell us?
That Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan can make Andre the Giant, our beloved hero, into a villain. Well, so too can Donald Trump make the United States Capitol into a good place to attack.
And even if you're sitting, because I'm interested in Sarah's position on the other, those of us who are perched on the outside watching in, New Zealand, the attitude towards Americans is, shall we say, ambivalent. So when we talk about professional wrestling, we talk about Hulk Hogan here. It's with the, well, Americans are crass and vulgar and la-di-da. It's always, this is another symptom of the failure of America to live up to do much more than provide us with an endless stream of very low cultural popular entertainments, of which Hulk Hogan is emblematic.
Like, talking about renegotiating your relationship to Hogan and what it says about us. I grew up a Canadian. He was the real American, and we hate Americans because they're the bad guys, and therefore we're the friendly colonizers who like put a nice face on it. And so Hulk Hogan was also wrapped up in that he was this vulgarity of Americanism that was bearing down on me from just across the border, and that his display of it was over the top, but also totally in keeping with the sort of kayfabe bad American vision that made Canadians acceptable. But the one time I saw him wrestle was WrestleMania 18. So that was The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. I was in the crowd that brought along his last huge babyface reign, and I was utterly baffled by it. He was back in his NWO persona as the heel, and The Rock was the hero, but the crowd just couldn't bring themselves to boo Hogan or cheer for The Rock, and it turned into this like pretty actually grassroots groundswell of new Hulkamania.
Whether it's nostalgia, call it what you will, respect, there's a lot of Hollywood Hulk Hogan fans here in Sky Dome tonight by Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Look at this! I would love to know what is going through The Rock's mind right now.
I never saw the Toronto crowd as being invested in Hogan as a babyface whatsoever. I know that Toronto audiences are notorious for never cheering for who they're supposed to and causing a ruckus. So I know there was probably a degree of performance to it, and just like, how badly can we mess up this epic match by being an asshole Toronto audience. But there was just also like, people were crying around me, like just having this emotional breakthrough of, I mean, it was probably a rush of like boomer and Gen X, my childhood is back, letting nostalgia creep in and allow you to usher a little fascism underneath it, maybe that was the start of it.
Because Hulk Hogan couldn't really pull off a heel because he wanted the audience to love him so much.
So Hollywood Hulk Hogan wasn't, I mean, he was wearing black. That's all I know because I've only seen photos, but he wasn't hateable enough.
I haven't seen any clips of Hulk Hogan doing the heel thing where I really bought it, even when, like, the first wave of the NWO thing, when I look at it, I go, yeah, okay, I guess. But I never, like when Jesse Ventura goes heel. Oh yeah, you can buy that. Macho Man was a brilliant heel.
Sarah, you saw Hulk Hogan supposedly a heel.
Yeah.
I just heard the audience didn't receive it the way it was meant to be received.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a real torch passing moment for The Rock. Probably one of the rare occasions where Hogan might actually have been helpful in that role. And it ended up being all about Hogan anyway. And he played into that once it was changing. I mean, The Rock was as adaptable as he's ever been as a wrestler and willing to go with it. But if I recall correctly, and it has been a while, I haven't rewatched it since I was on that floor, I don't think, or at least not that match. It sort of ends with the Hulk receiving like a redemptive hug from The Rock or something of that nature.
Maybe that's why they cried.
No, it was literally just people thinking that if they screamed hard enough, they could bring their childhoods back.
There's
Well,
something in that though, isn't there? So that in itself, when word on the street is only 8-year-olds like it anyhow, that nostalgia that WWE plays into is really quite extraordinary. And if it's been going on that long and it is that persuasive, the nostalgia, that tells you a lot as well, that we're not even in the present when we're watching. I think it's a really great thought experiment, though. Do we agree with Sarah that if there wasn't a Hulk Hogan, maybe the trajectory might have just, I mean, you can buy what you're selling or you can just sell it, but that's the job. And I think Hulk Hogan, whether or not he was conscious of it, even you might say the Gawker tape and everything that followed, even that turned into a work in the end, and it facilitated the rise of Peter Thiel, among other things, right? Because he funded Hogan's lawsuit and got a taste for all of that combat that went with it.
Silicon Valley billionaire Peter Thiel revealing to the New York Times overnight why he shelled out about $10 million for the courtroom takedown of Gawker. After Gawker published the 2007 article outing Thiel as gay, Thiel put a plan in place to secretly fund cases in hopes of crippling the website.
So if you want world changing, then the Gawker incident and the mechanics around it, that's pivotal in some ways, I start to think. When you have a guy with the money, that kind of money, backing Hulk Hogan, turning him from someone who should be a heel, friend's wife, sex tape, N-word, all of that, should be a heel, somehow turning him back into a hero.
After a 3-year suspension, Hulk Hogan has been reinstated into the WWE Hall of Fame. This second chance follows Hogan's numerous public apologies and volunteering to work with young people, where he's helping them to learn from his mistake.
If there are historians to look back on this period, that will be his impact and what he is remembered for sure.
Yeah.
And we still don't know the extent of the damage this has done because it's ongoing.
Yeah. That billionaires can bring journalists to heel with lawsuits.
Yes. And also just destroying the Gawker infrastructure ruined journalism in a sense as well, before we even get to the further implications of it.
It's a real moment, and it has had reverberations. It's what gets Elon Musk in the mix. It's what gets JD Vance in the mix.
Well, Sarah, you asked the hypothetical. I just want to give you a chance to tell us if you think there's an answer.
My answer is that I think it would be different. And I'm not just talking about if someone could have stepped into Hogan's position or not, but how different everything would have been in that ecosystem without his toxic influence backstage.
Yeah, that's actually a more interesting question, especially if you're a wrestling fan.
Well, the culture of wrestling, when you look at the old black and white videos from the 50s and 60s, the culture of wrestling was very much that community of wrestlers. And he broke that, didn't he? That's what you're saying. He broke that.
But even in terms of like blackballing black wrestlers and stuff like that, we don't know what talents were cut short. I mean, a lot of people believe that the union would have fallen through even if Hogan hadn't snitched. But if he hadn't been there to prevent the efforts, and if it had come through at some point, we're looking at workers who have more power, who could have influence behind the scenes and in front of the camera, and how that would change wrestling. Also, in terms of who could afford to live, we don't know who would even be alive. So, yeah, I just think it would be a very different business if Hogan weren't around. Better or worse, I don't know, but absolutely changed.
I think you know my answer. My answer is that Hulk Hogan was cast in a role and he did it well, better than anyone I can imagine. My proof for that is when Vince McMahon tried to recapitulate that story with other wrestlers, just never worked, right? So it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have transformed our culture without this particular really, really talented actor, in my opinion, and I am a member of the Directors Guild,
It's true.
playing this role.
I think you're right. I think because he pitched at children in the way that he did, that would be my, because Lex Luger, when he did his face turn and he'd been doing heel, arriving in the helicopter and body slammed Yokozuna and then went on the Lex Express blazoned with American flags for the next year, framed his politics as well as a babyface performance. Nobody believed him.
Right. Lex Luger, he was trying to do the same thing to give us our hero on the 4th of July to body slam the Samoan Japanese guy we all hate. But it didn't really work. I never saw Lex Luger except for that piece of tape, but I could just tell he didn't have it. You know, Hulk Hogan had it. I'm not taking that away from him. I don't know that anyone else could have done what Hulk Hogan did as well. Was it good for wrestling? Yes. Was it good for our culture and our democracy? No.
And we just don't know because the path not taken is the path not taken.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, what we're seeing is that path today, right? They're trying to do it without Hulk Hogan, and they're trying to do it without stuff that's not grotesquely, overtly bigoted. I mean, aren't they?
Absolutely. But what that means is it sort of grays out then. Given that what wrestling does is establish who the self is and who the other is, and is dependent on othering rather directly, if you can't use those social codes, what have you got? I mean, the rules are fairly straightforward, right? Babyface is aligned with the audience, fights for the audience, doesn't cheat, is generally a better technical wrestler. La-di-da, heel antagonizes the audience, gets the heat going, cheats when the ref's back is turned, does the nasty, all of that. Those simple rules, when we've had 20 or 30 years of this is America, this is not America, can you go back to those kinds of rules? Because the wrestling in the golden age, the 50s and 60s, the Gorgeous George, Ricky Starr, they were so well established that you could have homophobia being performed all over the place between Gorgeous George and Ricky Starr. What more do you need? But Gorgeous George could be a heel and Ricky Starr could be a face. And nobody had a problem with that because it was all about the wrestling and everything else was decoration. And somewhere along the line, the stories being told took over. That was Vince McMahon crafting stories for television. So you no longer have fans who come in and instantly go, face, heel, and start. Now the fans have to tell you the story. There's more exposition there than most theater these days.
I would recommend looking into what Tony Storm is doing in AEW right now. WWE's Netflix ratings, from what we can tell, have fallen far enough that AEW is in competition with their ratings again. I mean, it's still wrestling, it's not perfect, but they are providing an alternative just in terms of the actual in-ring product, in terms of ideology, in terms of storylines about collaboration and learning to work together. And, you know, we can finally beat these guys if we learn how to get along. And that also, yes, Tony Storm is miraculous in what she's doing right now. openly queer, in a promo, got on a balcony and screamed, "I'm here, I'm queer."
Okay, I can buy that because I think the present product won't do it.
No, it's hand in hand with
Yeah.
the great white hopes of MMA now. It's all a very cozy package.
That's what we're being sold. And even if we don't buy it, we buy it.
Okay, the Great White Hope thing, I definitely see that story over and over again. I can remember when Jerry Cooney was fighting Larry Holmes in the early 80s and they did the Great White Hope thing. But are you saying that today's WWE is offering Great White Hope characters as their heroes?
I just say they're part of the greater, like, cozy white supremacist fascist package. The great white hope stuff is happening more in MMA. And
Right.
I think that's responsible for the rise of Conor McGregor. It was that there were stars like John Jones, black men were succeeding, and then suddenly the greatest thing that ever happened to MMA was this Irish punk who was really quite middling as a talent and on the mic as well.
But
And
did he beat the black guy?
they weren't even in the same weight division. It wasn't a head-on competition. It was just
Mm.
about Conor McGregor racking up wins and being the new star of MMA and having all the fans like rally around him.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, that is what they're trying to do with Caitlin Clark, too. They're trying to do Hulk Hogan with Caitlin Clark, and she's an unwilling participant in that.
Yeah. It's like we're stalled almost. And these tropes seem to be all we know, but we don't, and it's terrifying to try and tell a story differently, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the tools even.
Well, Birth of a Nation was powerful because it was a backlash against emancipation, right?
Yeah.
And Hulk Hogan's version of World Wrestling Federation was powerful because it was a backlash against the civil rights movement.
Mm.
Okay. But what can Monday Night Raw on Netflix be a backlash against? Really nothing. So all it is a soap opera.
They spend a lot of time talking to us in ways that aren't wrestling, and they're not trusting the wrestling to carry the attention forward. It's overwrought, it's overwritten, and it's underplayed in some ways. You don't get the momentum because there's just so much in the way.
I mean, unless you're a fan who enjoys the soap opera part of it, right? And then the
And that
fighting
is
is,
the audience they've
yeah.
groomed, basically.
Yeah, but it's not telling you much. The stories aren't very story-like
Yeah.
either. So it's like watching Donald Trump on the platform dancing to his own drummer for 40 minutes.
Why doesn't he show his birth certificate?
3 weeks ago when I started, I thought he was probably born in this country. And now I really have a much bigger doubt than I did before. He doesn't have a birth certificate or he hasn't shown it.
When it came time for a backlash against Barack Obama, Donald Trump knew that professional wrestling had infiltrated our culture through cable news and reality television and wrestling itself enough that the stage was already built for him to perform that backlash without wrestling, right? He used cable news quite a bit, and he had a platform because of reality TV, but he didn't need wrestling.
We're already there.
Yeah, we were a wrestling nation. And so I'm not as interested in what wrestling is today because it already did its job, right? It turned us into consumers of wrestling products who don't even know they're watching wrestling products. They think they're watching journalism often. So then the question is, when do we get tired of our government, of our politics, of everything that we consume on the internet being wrestling? That's what I want to know.
Mm. It's a big question. It is a very big question. And it's about power, it's about othering, and the other can be any number of things in this scenario, but it is about self versus others, an antagonistic view of the world where the joy is in the fact of the antagonism rather than in any content provided to it. And so I hear your plea, and I really do believe we don't need wrestling anymore. Wrestling played back and forth with the popular imagination and the culture, and now we can't tell the difference. Yeah, absolutely agree, all of that. And there was a point where it was reflective and reflecting back maybe in the 80s, but now it's hard to tell, it's chicken and egg stuff now.
You were right, though, when we spoke the first time. The 90s was also reflective. It was reflective of a backlash against feminism,
Yeah,
really.
absolutely, because you cannot detach gender from this discussion of race. You cannot detach homophobia and transphobia from this discussion.
And there's his theme song, I Am a Real American. What a tremendous representative for the entire wrestling world and for the World Wrestling Federation is Hulk Hogan.
Well, I'll tell you, Gorilla, he's a hero to all, but not all of us like heroes.
Well, can't believe that you don't like a hero, Jess.
You know, Hogan's a coward, and this time he's going to have to look Yokozuna right in
Hogan's
the...
a cat. How can you even say that?
Because he cheap shot him at WrestleMania. Now he's got to look him straight
We're
in the eye.
told what we see. And what we're told we see, especially because you have these two contrary points of view going, this is what I saw, this is what I saw, this is what I saw, this is what I saw. Because it's destabilized with this back and forth, which has become the convention since the late 80s, a heel commentator, a face commentator. How are you to believe what you see? So when Alex Padillo, accompanied by the Secret Service, accompanied by Homeland Security, goes into a press conference and asks a question and is told that he's been loud, that he's interrupted, and gets hauled out by other Secret Service guys and other Homeland Security guys, this big man thrown to the floor and humiliated in that way. And you have two narratives over the same piece of tape. One of them telling us about the big, scary-looking Hispanic guy who challenged the vulnerable Homeland Security Secretary of Homeland Security, and therefore had to be injected if only he'd identified himself, if only he'd done this or that. On one hand, that story is being told. On the other hand, the story that is also being told is that he was being accompanied. He asked if he could be brought into that room, to the Homeland Security guy and the Secret Service guy, was brought as a senator into that room and identified himself as a senator and asked a question, and then that happened. The same bit of tape has two different commentaries running over it. And we're not even being told only one can be real. What we see is always already conditioned by what we're told we're seeing. That is the pro-wrestlingification of American politics in the real world. That's what we're seeing, shown to us over and over again, so that the grooves on which that narrative is imprinted get deeper and deeper and more resistant to change. Hulk Hogan may have done all of these things. And we have the tape, we have the Gawker video, we have the press interviews that he did, we have the way he spoke at that bar promoting his beer, which was also racist. We have all of those things. We somehow can be told what it means in a way that is opposite to what we are actually the evidence of our own eyes. We're told what we see, even if it's not what we see. And somehow it carries. And it generates the heat that it's supposed to. Because in order to follow the story, you have to take the narrative, you have to go with the narrative, not the evidence of your own eyes, because we don't have the tools any longer to interpret or to act in relation to what we actually see. I mean, Elon goes away, but maybe Laura Loomer takes his place. She's got the fervor, and she is also like a heel manager in that she wades in these odd moments and feeds actions to Trump that he then does, and everybody's horrified. But Laura Loomer is the one who made him do it. All the women around Trump actually look like female wrestlers, but also have some of those behaviors as well. Kirsty, what is it? Kirsty Noem? The way these stories are percolating, all of it sounds like wrestling. All of it, you get energized over and then deflated. So you go back for a bit more. That's what's really worrying, is that no matter which side you're on here, the news cycle itself is running much like the lead up to WrestleMania. Right now we're in the Royal Rumble phase, but soon we're going to be back at WrestleMania and it all will be resolved.
Wrestling Darkness is written, recorded, and edited by yours truly, Eric Byler. The music is composed by Michael Brook, performed by David Beninay and Stephen Munoz. Wrestling Darkness and other content you will find on the Eric Byler Substack feed are supported by a 501c3 nonprofit called ID Alliance. You can support us by subscribing or by making a tax-deductible donation. Thanks for listening.